This story is about in-laws who initially told their son and daughter-in-law to leave the house they had given them, but later begged them to please stay. What could have possibly happened? Let's find out together. Please subscribe and like our channel.
After dating my husband for 2 years, he proposed to me, and we decided to get married. I was at the right age for marriage, so I had been expecting that we would eventually tie the knot. However, at that time, my father was in the hospital recovering from a major surgery. So I asked my husband to wait a bit. Just to clarify, my father is now healthy. But my mother-in-law kept urging us to get married quickly. Due to her pressure, we quickly prepared for the wedding. Right after my father was discharged from the hospital. My husband is an only child. My mother-in-law suggested that we live together after getting married, promising that after about 2 years of living together, she would help us move out and buy our own place. I refused her offer. Despite her repeated suggestions to live together, I persisted in my refusal, and eventually, they provided us a house for our newlywed life. I had an apartment under my name, paid for by the savings I accumulated, and with some financial assistance from my parents. When we got married, my in-laws provided us with a house for our newlywed life. The 2 apartments were of similar value. In this situation, I was the one who prepared the dowry. But my mother-in-law brought up the topic of a betrothal gift. We had agreed to skip everything, except for the process of purchasing a house and preparing for our new life together. But my mother-in-law changed her mind later. She told me directly that it was natural for the groom's side to provide a house and for the bride's side to provide a betrothal gift. But this didn't make sense. I was too embarrassed to tell my parents that my mother-in-law had said such a thing. I confronted my mother-in-law, pointing out that I also have a house under my name, and am even bringing my own dowry. My husband agreed with me and told his mother, but she continued to be stubborn. For a while, my husband and mother-in-law often quarreled over this. Eventually, my husband apologized to me in front of his mother, and although she didn't seem happy about it, she admitted that I was right. We got past this episode and got married. My in-laws live about an hour away. During our newlywed days, I visited both our families equally. My mother-in-law always had a way of making me feel uncomfortable. Whenever we ate at her house, she would serve fresh rice to everyone else, but give me leftover rice. To be honest, I don't really mind whether the rice is fresh or leftover. Both have their own flavors, so I don't really care. So I just ate it the first few times, but I realized that this couldn't go on. I nudged my husband to get him to switch our rice bowls. My mother-in-law didn't look happy when she saw her son eating the cold rice. I enjoyed seeing her expression. Unable to bear it, she gave me cold rice again, and told me not to switch bowls with my husband. I said I was craving ramen anyway, and asked my husband to cook it for me. My husband went to cook the ramen, and my mother-in-law seemed upset that her son's rice was getting cold. We cooked 2 packets of ramen and ate together. I did everything a daughter-in-law is supposed to do. During the first year of my marriage, when we ate at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law cooked, but I helped set the table, and I did the dishes. I worked diligently during holidays and ancestral rites. My husband worked alongside me, but he was mostly just making a show of it. I had no complaints about my husband. In fact, I wanted to tell him not to work and just rest. Our salaries were similar, but he often had to work late. So I wanted him to rest on weekends and holidays. During the last holiday, while I was cooking, my father-in-law got upset because the soup was not heated enough. I said I would heat it more. But my mother-in-law chided me for not learning properly at my parents' house before getting married. I was so angry that I couldn't hide my feelings. And my mother-in-law seemed to enjoy seeing me upset. Unable to stand it, my husband had another argument with his mother. And this time, my father-in-law sided with his wife. They both even raised their voices at us. My husband couldn't stand it any longer and suggested that we should go home. I was also very angry because my mother-in-law brought up my parents. So we came home together. I assume my mother-in-law would have finished the holiday food preparation herself. On the day of the holiday, we didn't go to my in-laws but went to my parents' house. My mother-in-law kept calling me, but I didn't answer. Then she called my husband and yelled, cried, and wailed. My husband asked his mother what we had done wrong. Seeing my husband telling his mother that it was wrong to insult me over the soup not being hot enough, I felt a bit relieved. After the holiday, we were resting at home on the weekend when the doorbell rang. It was my in-laws. They raised their voices and told us to get out of the house that they had given us when we got married. They said they didn't know we would behave like this, and told us to leave the house immediately and transfer the ownership to them. My husband seemed a bit taken aback. I told them to do so. I said we could evict the tenant from the house under my name and live there. When I said this, my in-laws seemed taken aback. I said we had planned to treat both families fairly, since we each had a house from our families. My husband cut me off and said what I wanted to say. We'll return the house, but don't expect anything from us in the future. My husband said this, which was exactly what I wanted to say. I felt like I had said all I needed to say. So I told them I had an appointment and left the house. I lied about having an appointment. I left because I thought I might say something harsh to my in-laws if I stayed there any longer. After I left, my in-laws said that if we had behaved properly, they wouldn't have had to say such things. My husband asked them what we hadn't done. He said we would do everything they wanted and vacate the house in a few days, so they should just go home. When my mother-in-law asked where he was going right away, my husband said we could live with my parents. He said my parents would be thrilled if we moved in. My husband called me after my in-laws had left and told me what had happened. My in-laws changed their mind and told my husband to stay in the house. But he kept saying that we would move in with my parents. He continued to say that we could live with my parents for a while, and then move into my house, and my in-laws mumbled and left. Since then, my in-laws have been trying to persuade my husband to stay in the house. If we say we're going to move in and live with my parents for a while, I think my parents will be shocked. My parents want to live comfortably without worrying about their children. I don't know how the relationship with my in-laws will be resolved, but I think I just need to stand by and let my husband handle it. After all, he's the one who's more upset than me at my in-laws' unfair words.
This episode revolves around a peculiar incident where the in-laws, who had initially demanded their son and daughter-in-law to leave the house they had given, later pleaded for them to stay. What could have transpired here? Let's delve into this together.